Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. For the Trump administration, the prosecution of former FBI Director James Comey is now going from challenging to epically humiliating. And in court, U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan, a former beauty queen and personal Trump lawyer who has never prosecuted a case before in her life, just had to make an embarrassing admission in front of the judge. First, the background.
Breaking news just minutes ago, former FBI Director James Comey entered a not guilty plea to federal charges. He is accused of lying to Congress and obstructing a proceeding related to the FBI's investigation of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Comey was charged just days after President Trump publicly called on the Justice Department to prosecute him.
On this day, as Comey entered his plea of not guilty, prosecutor Lindsey Halligan was forced to admit that out of more than 100 attorneys in her office, not a single prosecutor was willing to sign on and help her with the case. So Halligan had to bring in assistant prosecutors from another district. As Ross Story reported, one of the details revealed by legal experts and reporters who were in the courtroom is that the U.S. Attorney's team was woefully unprepared. U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan was forced to bring on outside counsel because none of the prosecutors in her district were willing to sign on to the case. Those outside lawyers confessed to the judge on Wednesday that they wouldn't mind delaying the trial until July because they were brand new to the case and didn't have all the information necessary. As Christopher O'Leary, a former FBI agent, told MSNBC, the prosecution admission was stunning and unprecedented.
These AUSAs going in and telling judge, we don't really have all the details.
Right.
We're new to this. Having been in court and worked with tons of AUSAs over the years, I've never heard of that or seen it. Probably not what a judge wants to hear. I'll put it in the category, I arrested a bank robber when I was a very young agent, and the defense said that my client was drunk when he robbed the bank, so he shouldn't be held culpable. My jaw dropped, but this is really just about as impressive as that was. I just have never seen that before.
The judge cut no slack to the prosecutors and set the trial date for January, not next July, as the outside U.S. attorneys had requested. On Fox News, conservative legal analyst Andrew McCarthy was asked about the strength of the prosecution case.
I don't believe they have a case, Bill, based on what we've seen in the indictment and what we know from the public reporting. But now we're going to find out.
Now that Comey has formally entered a plea, the real work for both the defense and the prosecution begins. McCarthy expects Comey's defense team to file a slew of motions seeking to dismiss the case.
The judge will set a schedule for the filing of motions. I expect that Comey's team is going to make motions, particularly about selective prosecution and that sort of thing. And the judge will have to rule on that. And if the case doesn't get thrown out prior to a trial date, we'll have a trial.
If the case goes to trial, the key question will revolve around testimony that James Comey gave 5 years ago to the U.S. Senate. Comey testified he did not authorize his FBI assistant Andrew McCabe to leak a story to the Wall Street Journal. McCabe admits leaking, but says he only spoke to Comey about it afterwards. Comey's prosecutors are now reportedly focused on other leaks years later, but as McCarthy points out, there's a problem.
The problem is, at the time that there were leaks from, for example, from Comey through Dan Richman of Columbia Law School, neither Comey nor Richman was an FBI official, and the stuff that was leaked was not about Hillary Clinton, which is what the indictment says. So I just think that factually they have a very difficult time making this case. And let's not forget, the U.S. attorney who Trump had put in the first place, Eric Siebert, who evidently was a good enough U.S. attorney in terms of the Trump enforcement program, that Attorney General Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Blanche went to the president to try to persuade him to keep him in place. He was the one who didn't want to bring this indictment. I don't think he didn't want to bring it because he has any great fondness for Comey. I think he didn't want to be responsible for signing off on an indictment that they might not be able to prove.
An indictment they might not be able to prove. And again, 100 line prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia felt the charges could not be proved. And those 100 attorneys keep refusing to even show up at the prosecution table in court. This refusal to help prosecute the Comey case speaks volumes about U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan. Halligan seems to believe her job is to manufacture crimes as personal favors to her political benefactor, Donald Trump. Halligan is a prosecutor or U.S. attorney in name only. In reality, Halligan is a glorified PR clown in heels and hairspray. She's like a tourist who is lost in a law library. And her prosecution is not really a legal proceeding. It is an absurd and putrid farce. Eventually, a judge or a jury will say as much. And we will all be reminded once again that under Donald Trump, justice has degenerated to a single tawdry purpose: appeasing the old orange man, even if it means total embarrassment. By the way, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson keeps delaying a vote on the Epstein files, and now it's blowing up in Johnson's face.
Thank you all so much.
Mr. Speaker, when will you swear in Ms. Grijalva?
And that was Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson walking out of the room rather than address questions about a swearing in that would trigger votes on the Trump-Epstein files. Shame on him. Mike Johnson buried in mockery for fleeing questions about swearing in Dem. It's now been more than 2 weeks since Democrat Adelita Grijalva won a special congressional election in Arizona, but Grijalva keeps hearing nothing from the speaker or his office about her swearing in.
So the speaker's office has had absolutely no communication with me directly at all. So everything is going through Leader Jeffries or Whip Clark, and every person in the Democratic caucus has been so incredibly supportive.
And I think Mike Johnson is trying to get either Lauren Boebert or some of these other Republicans to get their name off of the discharge petition before Adelita Grijalva, who is that 218th member, comes to Congress, because she was supposed to be sworn in. It is actually insane. She won her special election. Once you win your election, you're supposed to get sworn in. He is refusing to swear her in. And they're using the excuse of the fact that the House isn't in session to not swear her in. However, Mike Johnson swore in Republicans when the House wasn't in session.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular from Ekrenz, who wrote, "Keeping pedos safe, one shutdown at a time." I hear you. I look forward to reading your comments about the Trump prosecutor in the Comey case having to admit there wasn't a single government prosecutor in the district who was willing to sign on. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.